Give me a couple last bad translations you want to discuss. This kind of surprised me, but I also see how you nuance in it and why you include it in this list. So coming in at number 7, and really this is in no particular order, by the way. Probably should have said that at the beginning. Why do you include the King James Version in quotes, bad translation?
Well, I have it over on my table over there. My book authorized the use and misuse of the King James Bible. The
Mm.
King James Bible was an excellent translation. It was a translation into an English that no one speaks anymore. Scientists agree, historians too, that all speakers, native speakers of Elizabethan English are equally dead. And the problem with the King James is when it is used as an English translation without a careful evaluation of what in the world is English. What is a language? And people dismiss this very quickly in their defenses of the King James Version, but I think they really need to think it through, or we're giving up the value of vernacular translation, okay? Because English is, if you think of it as like a Venn diagram, over time, Elizabethan English stays where it is, and English is moving away from it. There's
Mm.
there's a ton of overlap, right? I'm listening through the King James right now. I was doing it on my way up to work this morning
Mm.
on the Dwell app, actually. I love it. Most of it is intelligible, especially to me. I grew up with it. I'm fine with it. But I know, because of years of work on this now, that there are not just dead words in the King James, words we know we don't know, but false friends, I call them. It's as if they're false cognates between Elizabethan English and contemporary English. Words we don't know, like the phrase that was my sort of original entry point into this realization was in First Kings 18:21, I think. Elijah's on Mount Carmel, and he says to the Israelites, "How long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, then follow him, but if Baal, then follow him." Well, I grew up hearing stirring sermons on that in King James onlyism. And then I was reading the ESV one day while I was writing a Bible lesson for 8th graders for BJU Press, as it happens, and it said, "How long will you go limping between two opinions?" And I thought, that's
Hmm.
not right. It said halt, which means stop. So
Huh.
I said, well, I'll look at the Hebrew. The Hebrew is limp. And I was like, man, the King James translators wouldn't just make a dumb error like that. They were very smart men. So I searched for the word halt in the King James Version, and I stumbled across in the Gospels, Jesus heals the halt and the blind. In other words, the lame or the limping. And I realized, duh, how long halt ye between two opinions doesn't mean how long do you stop between this opinion and that one. It means how long do you go limping back and forth
Hmm.
between those opinions. That's a false friend because language change caused me to misunderstand without realizing it. That word halt, we still have it, but we use it differently in a context like that one. And I've actually polled now well over 100 people, around 200 people in
Huh.
various methods. And I think 4 or 5 now got it right. And a few of them had read my book. So the others were like Old Testament scholars. It's not a huge deal, but you multiply this over many other words. Like I've just been reading in Joshua now, coasts is used over and over. The coasts of Benjamin, of the different tribes. Well, it doesn't. The word coast back then meant what we would call borders. It's just these little like cracks in the sidewalk that you don't realize you're stumbling over. So the King James is bad, quote unquote, huge quotes here. It's a very good translation, but it's misused if you treat it as an English translation without all those qualifications. If you're using it in institutional settings, in a church, preaching, if you're saying this is the one that you should read at home, I think that's a
Mm.
misuse of it. And I think the King James
Mm.
translators, if they were still alive, would stand right with me and saying, please, at least revise our work. People can no longer fully understand it.
Wow, that's really interesting to hear that they would back up not a King James only perspective, the very ones who first translated King James. So
Right.
the heart of the concern is not that there's this sectarian worldview behind it. It's
No,
clearly not crackpot. It's just that
no,
language itself has changed. So it's harder and harder to understand if used as a primary translation tool today for people who want to
exactly.
understand the Word of God.